What if Donald Trump's pressure on Canada was never about protecting American interests? What if his tariff threats were never about national security? What if his demands for billions in revenue have now triggered the loss of the very infrastructure America needs most? Because this week, as Trump continues to threaten Canada's oil supply with escalating tariffs, the developer behind the Keystone XL pipeline publicly declared it is no longer interested in building the project. Trump wanted billions. Instead, he may have lost strategic control over the energy supply that powers 60% of American crude oil imports. This is no longer just about trade policy. This is about leverage. And right now, Trump is losing it. Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada earlier this year, 25% on most goods, 10% on energy. He framed these as protecting American workers and securing the border. He promised they would strengthen national security and force Canada to negotiate. But the numbers tell a different story. Canada supplies 62% of all crude oil imported by the United States. That is 4.1 million barrels per day. American refineries process 16.5 million barrels daily, but domestic production is only 13.4 million. The gap must be filled, and Canada fills it. This is not symbolic dependence. This is structural. American refineries are designed to process heavy crude oil. That is what Canada produces. The United States produces light crude. Light crude cannot replace heavy crude without retooling refineries at a cost of billions of dollars over multiple decades. The infrastructure does not exist. The investment is not happening. The dependence is real. Refineries in the Midwest, particularly Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan, process the largest share of Canadian crude through Alberta pipelines. The Mountain West depends on Canadian supply. The Gulf Coast imports significant volumes to blend with domestic production. Without Canadian oil, these refineries face importing expensive overseas crude, reducing capacity, or investing billions to reconfigure for light crude over multiple years. None strengthen energy security. All increase costs. Trump knows this. His administration knows this. And yet, while imposing tariffs to extract revenue, Trump has publicly demanded that Keystone XL be built immediately. He posted that the project was viciously jettisoned by the Biden administration and called for its resurrection. He promised easy approvals. He framed it as urgent. But there is a problem. The company that proposed Keystone XL no longer wants to build it. TC Energy spun off its oil pipeline business into Southbow in late 2024. Southbow stated clearly that the company has moved on from Keystone XL. When asked about Trump's demand, a representative said the company is no longer in the oil pipeline business. That is not ambiguous. That is a refusal. This did not happen in isolation. Keystone XL was first proposed in 2008. It faced years of opposition from environmental groups, indigenous communities, and legal challenges. President Obama rejected it in 2015. Trump revived it in 2017. President Biden canceled it on his first day in office in 2021. TC Energy halted construction. Permits expired. The project became politically toxic and economically uncertain. Now Trump is trying to revive it again. But the business case has collapsed. Major oil companies including Shell, Exxon, and Total sold off their tar sands assets. New projects stopped moving forward. Low oil prices and climate concerns shifted the market. Without guaranteed pipeline capacity, tar sands expansion became unviable. The developer walked away, and Trump's tariffs are not helping. Here is the contradiction. Trump is pressuring Canada with tariffs while begging for a pipeline that only Canada can deliver. Those strategies do not align. Tariffs increase costs and create uncertainty. Pipeline projects require long-term stability and cooperation. Investors do not commit billions when the political environment is hostile. Developers do not return to cancel projects when permits are uncertain. Trump's strategy assumes he has leverage. But leverage works both ways. Canada controls the infrastructure. Canada produces the oil. Canada decides whether to expand capacity or diversify exports. And right now, Canada is watching Trump demand something he cannot force and threaten the supply he cannot replace. The timing matters. Reports suggest that a new pipeline proposal called the Bridger Project could revive parts of Keystone XL using existing pipe in Alberta and building new sections in Montana and Wyoming. But the project requires a presidential permit, regulatory approval, and cooperation between Ottawa and Washington. And it requires that Canada believes the project will not be cancelled again in 4 years. Trump has given no reason for that confidence. He revoked Biden's cancellation order, but permits remain expired. Legal challenges remain unresolved. Environmental reviews remain incomplete. Even if Trump approves a new permit, the next president could revoke it. That is not stability. That is risk. And risk drives investors away. Meanwhile, Trump's tariffs are already creating consequences. American consumers are paying higher prices for gasoline and diesel fuel. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that nearly 90% of the tariff burden falls on American firms and consumers, not foreign exporters. Refineries in the Midwest and mountain states are facing higher costs. Business leaders are warning that continued tariffs could disrupt supply chains and slow economic growth. Trump has dismissed these warnings. He claims Americans are gaining tremendously from tariffs. He denies that consumers are paying higher costs. But data from independent economists, the Federal Reserve, and industry groups contradict him. The tariffs function as a tax on domestic consumption. They reduce competitiveness. They weaken investment. They do not bring back manufacturing or reduce dependence. And the institutional response is telling. Business groups representing the refining industry have publicly warned that prolonged tariffs will increase gasoline prices nationwide. The American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers Association stated that nearly 70% of crude imports come from Canada and Mexico, and that using the right types of crude keeps refineries efficient. Industry executives are saying directly that tariffs undermine energy security. Republican lawmakers from energy-dependent states have expressed concern privately. Some question whether tariffs serve any purpose when dependence cannot be eliminated. Democrats have seized on the contradiction. State officials have warned that refinery closures would devastate local economies. Montana's leadership emphasized that federal approval processes must be stable. These are warnings from officials who understand that energy infrastructure requires certainty, not impulsive shifts. This is where the story shifts from policy failure to strategic miscalculation. Trump built his brand on toughness and winning trade wars. But this episode shows something different. He imposed tariffs to extract billions. He demanded a pipeline to secure energy supply. Instead, he created a situation where Canada holds the leverage, the developer walked away, and American consumers pay the price. This is not strength. This is contradiction. The pattern is becoming clear. Trump threatens. The threat backfires. He doubles down. The damage compounds. He claims victory. The facts tell a different story. This is improvisation masked as boldness. And when improvisation meets structural economic reality, structural reality wins. Consider what Trump has accomplished. He wanted to pressure Canada into concessions. Canada has instead accelerated trade diversification. He wanted to demonstrate American leverage. He has instead revealed American vulnerability in energy supply chains. He wanted to force pipeline construction. The developer publicly stated it has no interest. He wanted to collect billions in tariff revenue. American businesses and consumers are paying the cost, while Canada finds alternative buyers. Each of these outcomes represents the opposite of what was intended. That is strategic failure. And the consequences affect prices, jobs, investment decisions, and long-term energy security. At the same time, American reliance on Canadian oil remains unchanged. The infrastructure is locked in. The refineries are configured for heavy crude. The alternatives do not exist. Trump can threaten tariffs, but he cannot eliminate the dependence. He can demand pipelines, but he cannot force construction. Mark Carney has not responded with threats. He has remained calm, factual, and disciplined. Ottawa announced modest investments in border security to address Trump's stated concerns. Canada imposed targeted retaliatory tariffs, but later suspended additional measures to avoid escalation. Carney allowed American businesses, lawmakers, and analysts to highlight the economic damage. He let the contradictions speak for themselves. This is strategic patience. Trump thrives on confrontation. Carney thrives on stability. While Trump reacts, Carney builds options. While Trump threatens, Carney diversifies. While Trump demands, Carney waits. And the longer this continues, the weaker Trump's position becomes. The possible loss of the Keystone XL project is not just a setback. It is a symbol of failed leverage. Trump tried to pressure Canada into submission. Instead, he may have driven away the infrastructure investment he claims to want. He tried to extract billions in tariff revenue. Instead, he may have accelerated Canada's shift toward other markets. He tried to project strength. Instead, he revealed dependence. This matters because energy security is not abstract. It affects prices at the pump, costs for businesses, and supply chain stability. If Canada continues to diversify while American refineries remain dependent on Canadian heavy crude, the balance of power shifts. Ottawa gains options. Washington loses flexibility. That is strategic failure. Trump's tariffs were supposed to bring Canada to the table. They were supposed to force concessions. They were supposed to demonstrate American strength. Instead, they have revealed American vulnerability. The United States needs Canadian oil more than Canada needs American approval for new pipelines. And that gap is what leverage looks like. If you value serious analysis that tracks power, consequences, and strategic outcomes, subscribe to Canada Today. We focus on the facts that shape geopolitics, not the rhetoric that distracts from them. Because sometimes the real story is not what a leader demands. It is what he loses in the process.